Morning, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here. And none of what I'm going to speak is available in any book. So there's no theory at all. There is no author for this. It's purely the experience of Ashoka as an organization in the last 35 years. And that's why instead of calling it leadership, we've added the word new leadership, because it's purely about what we have seen as requirement for the future and what do leaders need in them to survive in the future. So please don't refer this to any books. It's not available. Uh, and I just want to kind of say that one of the most significant learnings of Ashoka as an organization in the last 35 years is that we know that somebody changes the world. Meaning, we have seen again and again in the history, Mahatma Gandhi changed the world, Martin Luther King changed the world. So many people have changed the world. And now we and recently in the last 30, 40 years, we started looking for social entrepreneurs who gave up all their lives to change the world and make the world a better place. Then we realized, oh my God, it's not just a few handful people who can change the world. Now we need everyone to take charge, because the problems are actually increasing than the solutions available. So that's why we now believe that everybody needs to be a change maker. Everyone. So all your children, all the schools, wherever you're working, how do you make sure that all your children can eventually become change makers? And why is this important? You will get to see a glimpse of why that is important through my conversation, so we can have probably questions towards the end. So I'm going to start off by saying this, that the world is really changing fast. All of us know that the world is really, really fast changing, right? Now there is enough proof for this, and the change is actually exponential, right? So if you look at the way the world is changed, one important notice what we take is repetition is ended, right? Meaning you look at the last 30, 40 years ago, everybody was trained to be good at repetition, right? The best example is we were all trained to, there was really a big training to become a bank's teller, right? Many of us will know there was a job in the bank, it was called a teller. So the person used to take your checks and give you cash. Now where is the job of the teller? The job of the teller has disappeared. Now the same way, if you look at factories, you look at any car manufacturing factory. Now how many people are repeating things? Actually nobody, because it's all replaced by bots, right? And now information is also being managed by bots. So repetition is ended. Now that is the biggest sign of that the world is changing exponentially. The other extreme of this is that, in 1955, if a company became a Fortune 500 company, the company stayed in the list of Fortune 500 for 35 years. A company stayed in the Fortune 500 list for 35 years. Today it is less than 5 years. Right? That's also exponential change. So we have to be prepared much better to adapt to these changes, right? So I'm going to show you a very quick video. Maybe you've all seen these videos, but it's a good reminder. not made by an Indian organization. It's actually made by Smithsonian's, right? So you can imagine that this is the way all our classrooms are changing, right? Now, this is a fantastic statistics which really shook me when I read this. 65% of second graders today will do jobs that do not exist, right? So what is the point in which we are teaching these children? What are we doing so that they get the right skills? Now, I really love this chart because again by Intel, if you look at it, this is what happens in 1 minute of internet time, right? So we normally say that we always will prepare for the future, but there's no point anymore. We have to prepare for today, right? Today, in 1 minute, actually 150,000 hours of videos would have been watched in 1 minute, right? And almost 3.3 million status updates would have shared on Facebook. Now this is what is happening as of today, right? And I don't know how many of you know what a zettabyte actually looks like. You know, we crossed internet traffic of 4 zettabytes in 2013. Now this is what you saw there. It's been exponentially increasing, like, 1,000 over times of exponential increase. Now 4 zettabytes, actually you all know gigabytes, terabytes, exabytes, petabytes, and then come zettabytes, right? So it's really huge. That's all we have to imagine. It's really large. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you some insights of leadership from 3 stories. I'm just going to talk about 3 stories with all of you and give some insights from there. Now, after we discuss those 3 insights, I have 6 questions, right? And all of you are going to discuss those 6 questions. So we will form some groups amongst us to discuss those 6 questions, and we'll have some moderators, and then we'll close it. So that's the whole idea. So you're going to hear me speak for all the 90 minutes, so please don't worry. So, so the first thing what we have realized about leadership is we cannot control. Now, control leadership is gone. It's all about empowerment now, right? Meaning I'm sure some of you in this room, when I started my job almost 25 years ago, I started as a junior most person in an organization. There was a clear hierarchy of leadership, right? There was a pyramid leadership. You all must have, some of you would be familiar. There was a boss, super boss, and then there was a middle boss, and then there was another boss, then I was a little minion. So many of us started as minions, right? Now today, if you go to an organization or if your students are creating companies, and if they go and say there, I am going to be the super boss, you listen to me, who's going to listen? Even none of us want to listen, right? So the leadership is turned around. Now that is all about empowerment and not control, right? So I'm going to talk about one person who is one of our Ashoka's favorites. I know how many of you know this lady called Gloria D'Souza. She's from Bombay. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years ago. But Gloria was a teacher, meaning like many of us, she was a school teacher. And she was tired So 1, 2, and 3 here. And behind are the 3 tables. Behind would be 4, would be Francis. Francis is there. That space, yeah. And number 5 is Reena ji. Exactly wherever you're sitting. And Renu, will you please move behind? Yeah, you have chart papers. Feel free to scribble, write whatever you like. I'm going to repeat. 1 here, 2 here, 3 in the middle, 4, 5, 6. 3 is here, 3 is in the middle. 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4, thank you, 5 in the middle, and 6 there.
That's a reality.
Yes and no. And also the same.
They just share ideas and talk to each other.
Teachers, do they have
Then we
kind
get
of
to
leeway,
follow 50 ideas
degrees
from
of
the
freedom?
each and every.
And what are the only places, how can I reduce the touch points where they are looking up?
Your students.
What's the plan area of this? I'm not really sure. I mean, little details. And if they do not know little details about their organization, how do you expect them to take a vision forward? So I believe such learning should happen.
I'm just asking a basic question, friends, when we're coming up with solutions. We position
And the action oriented stuff, the stuff that I know is like probably tingling
And
at
which
their
comes
heart
from
and their minds. And they're probably trying to find questions, but as being leaders, you also feel it's a little lonely journey. So we need to give them a warning. So we don't have to worry about his questions. That doesn't matter. Very, very important. So that way we picture orientations, meetings, PPAs, diaries.
Okay. Now I have to become you. What do you do to your class students? Can we have some silence, please? Is that what you all say? I don't know what you all say. Okay, so the most unruly group is there. Hello. We all collectively decided question number 6 or group 6 is the unruly group. Sorry. Now I've got your attention. Can we sit down? All right. Okay. So again, like I started saying that these concepts are brand new. These are from learnings with social entrepreneurs. These are not easy at all because we have to figure it out as we go along. And I can tell you, I was telling Sonali before I started, this is the first time I'm doing this, right? I mean, the first time I've thrown up these questions, the first time I have school leaders talking about these questions is now. So we'll probably have to do a lot more of this, but thank you so much for participating. That's the first step. So let us now hear from the tables on what happened there. Either the moderators can come up or they can nominate anybody they like. So we'll start with question 1. So we'll start with question 1. How do we inspire teachers to take care of their entire class? Who's coming? That's a great sign. So would you want to just summarize, please? Yeah. Yes, please. And please feel free to bring your charts if you like. and get some help from your team members as well.
Yeah, we didn't get a chart. I mean, I did that on my book. Hi, good afternoon. All right, so my group was very vociferous and they were all over the place trying to give lots of thoughts and lots of ideas. I've scribbled a lot of them and I hope I'm doing justice, guys. Uh, the question given to us was how do we inspire teachers to take care of their entire classroom beyond academics? So the initial part of our discussion revolved around what's inspiration, what's beyond classroom, and what's the entire class. We got into thoughts of an entire class could vary in different scenarios in India. It could be even 50 and 100 in some schools. It could even be 10 or 15. So that definitions we got into. I think the inspiration part was something that drew a lot of thoughts and comments. I loved one particular point. You know, if you allow a lot of freedom with responsibility, teachers get inspired. You know, you give them a lot of freedom and yet make sure that they are accountable and there is a sense of responsibility. And one of my team members put it across very beautifully. Cushion for the experiments that teachers do, right? So whenever you are allowing a lot of freedom and you want your teachers to go beyond the classroom, right, and look at doing experiments within the classroom, they need that assurance that if they're failing, that there is someone out there to cushion them because they are bound to fail. They will make mistakes. But are you going to stand up for them? Are you going to protect them from the parents? You know, that's something that's so critical, you know, in inspiring them. Of course, you as a leader need to walk the talk. That was another point that was brought out. Very vehemently, one of my team members talked about that your teachers need to be very clear about the objectives of what is expected out of them, right? There's another point that was made is what's the initial milestone that you started off from and where are you headed? Is that measurable? Have you figured out where you are today? Where are you heading? And how are you going to measure the progress that is being made? So those were some of the broad points that came about in the word of inspiration. And then when we looked at the topic of going beyond academics, loads of words came out. The usual ones like sports and extracurricular activities to life skills to, you know, some very specific ones. And I think these were some of the interesting ones. One was about, you know, can we teach our children aesthetics and beauty? You know, very rarely do we talk to our children about, you know, just the aesthetics. And in a country which took pride, and if ever you go back 100, 200 years, just look at the aesthetic sense with which our country lived. And just look at the kind of cities that we live in today. And somewhere we as teachers have probably failed to put that sense of aesthetics in our children. So, and I really thought that was something that we need to talk to our children about. Of course, you've got the citizenship, the words that we keep listening to. Those were the broader ones that came about. And an ability to question. I think that was another key highlight in that topic of going beyond academics, because in an educational system or a curriculum that revolves entirely around making our children understand what the answers are and giving them grades for the answers that they give you, if you can make them learn to question, and that's one of the biggest skills for the future that we will be seeing. And yeah, so those were broadly some of the points. And, you know, yeah, I saw that. So I'm going to just sum that up there with the fact that, you know, I think a lot of them insisted on, you know, using films of successful teachers or schools, teacher internships. You know, internships another one that I would want to end with. You know, do you realize that your children study for 18 long years if they've done a bachelor's, or 20 years, and for the first time in their life they start working when they've got a job? I mean, that's the kind of an education system that we've created. We don't have hands-on learning for our children at any level. So internships and, you know, practical knowledge of actually doing things for our children could really help them to inspire them to go beyond the academics. So broadly, that's what we were looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Thank you so much. You know, I think getting students to question, we are actually happy when they question about subjects. But we get very nervous when they start questioning our processes. So how do we open ourselves to get even questioned on the processes is very interesting. All right, the next one, team 2, who's coming? What are the ways every teacher can interact with external stakeholders? The smallest but a powerful group. I can hold it for you.
No, is it good afternoon or is it still morning? It's good afternoon. So good afternoon, people. I'm Usha Pandit, and I think we got one of the easiest questions, at least we thought so. What are the ways every teacher can interact with external stakeholders, including parents? Well, we decided that everyone is an external stakeholder, right? So as far as education is concerned, there's no one particular, I mean, there is this internal stakeholder, which is probably the teachers and students, management, and probably the parents. And then everybody outside, the whole world out there is an external stakeholder in education. So we've listed everybody down, and I'm not going to read all those: resource people, community people, helpers, professionals. And going with what Sultan just said about internships, I think organizations, trade, workplaces, and NGOs, just exposure that children need to get to these places, I think was important. Then of course there's social media and media, SMS, and the whole internet world that allows you to perhaps talk to someone in Japan if they've just had an earthquake, for example. Might be one aspect. It could be the beggar outside the school whom you have never spoken to before. It could be a fireman who comes to have a chat with your children because you're talking to them about fire. And that might actually lead to more information that you get. In an informal chat, he might tell you a lot more than just about fire. So I think that kind of education where you invite life into the classroom is extremely important, because, and in that process, I think every human being in the world or every object or place in the world becomes an external stakeholder, according to us. We divided our thoughts into who. We started with who, and then we said how, and then we went on to why, because I think Molly said why, and that's a very important question. Why are we wanting external stakeholders to come into our schools, and how are our teachers going to get them in? So again, for how, it was pretty simple: the face-to-face, PTAs, meetings, diary orientation, phone calls, etc., that are normally done, an old world, and I think very important. One of the things that I would say is that the phone calls are great. So if you have 30 students in a classroom, and if the teacher decided that once a week, one child, you'd make a phone call to the parent and have a little chat about that child, I think the connections that you would have with the parent and the child is absolutely mind-blowing. So I think that much, 10 minutes per week, is something that I would encourage teachers to put in, so that there is greater connectivity and greater feeling of oneness and belonging with the parents. And then of course there is the digital world. So you've got WhatsApp groups, and we went into whether parents should be allowed into the teachers and teachers should be allowed into the parents' WhatsApps. Who should, there's a feeling of, I mean, I think because the digital world is so new to us, I've always felt that, you know, we were not born into the digital world, and there is an automatic sense of caution when we talk about it. But eventually, I think all that sort of caution is going to recede when our children become teachers, and therefore we are going to use technology more. One thing that I personally think is very important to create empathy in children is the recognition that you need to give to empathy. So if you have prizes for English and for mathematics and history, geography, etc., but you have no prizes for empathy. So on your annual day, if you put a prize for empathy and called it the highest prize, if for a college admission, for example, the colleges decided that empathy would be one of the biggest, you know, reasons why they should take a child into college, and if we actually valued that and walked the talk and actually gave those prizes, then I think it would be easy, isn't it? Because the minute you value something and you cherish something and you reward it, you are automatically there. the why, you come close to me? Until you actually touch me. Okay, I'll finish quickly. He's threatening me. I don't want to be grabbed. Do not want to be grabbed at this age. No, no. It'll be more than empathy. Yeah. I feel, okay. All right, so we talked about the why, which was important, and I think emotional connections, sensitivity, we talked of perspectives that children need, connecting with the real world, values, and to create change through understanding people, problem solving, reflections on local, national, world issues, doing and reaching out, collaboration. All of these are possible if we reach out to the world, and life then walks into the classroom. When are you going to do this? So this is something that we need to think about, because you don't want it to be a one-off, a one-off thing that, well, let's call the alumni now, let's do this once a year. I was saying that maybe we should integrate it into the lesson plans. So that if you have a column there and if you put these down, then the teacher, every time she plans a lesson, she's going to ask herself, how am I going to integrate life? How am I going to integrate people? Where is the lessons and values in empathy that this particular lesson, whether it's maths, English, science, whatever, is going to, how it's going to be incorporated into her everyday lesson planning, so that it becomes then part of the whole fabric of planning itself, and therefore it comes into the schools and into the classrooms without it being one of those extraneous aspects of school life where we don't have to think. Then I think all of us would be just amazing here. If you came into a workshop like this, you'd have so much to talk about because you're doing it every day. And where, of course, in school, online, etc., that was the easiest part where. But I think it was a very fruitful discussion. Thank everybody on my panel. They were absolutely amazing. And there was also someone from technology whom we need to talk to a lot more, mobile apps and portals and Google, etc. So thank you very much, people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's okay, let them come. Thank you very much. And we already ate up all the tea break. So now you don't have any tea break. I hope you all got your teas. And now I'm going to get stares from Sonali because I'm going to eat into her time. So let's not do that. Let's kind of be sensitive and move very quickly. So the third question was, how do we empower teachers to do the things they want?
As soon as possible. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so the question was about empowerment of teachers. So I had a fairly vocal crowd with me, each of them having extremely good beliefs, very fervent beliefs. And so it's always difficult to get a lot of beliefs which are sometimes clashing, sometimes also in line with each other to get in. But I think we did a pretty good job. And I still believe that it's a very difficult question. This is not a question which actually only involves schools. This is a broader question which all organizations face. Okay, it's very difficult because there's always a difficulty in finding out what that line is. We know what the line is with respect to no balls. Okay, we lost a match because of that. But with respect to this, it's a little bit difficult. Okay, there you go. So very quickly, I'll tell you. So the overarching point which came across was about culture, about creation of a culture where there is a common belief, there is a common mission statement, there's a common objective, and all the teachers, and which is participative. There's a huge degree of inclusivity which allows people and teachers to actually participate in defining what the school should represent, not just the school, but also across schools and as a whole, the education system per se. This allows for multiple things. It allows for innovation. The culture allows for innovation. It allows for participation, having a rational, unbiased opinions, unbiased, objective performance measurements, and so on, which actually allows teachers to feel part of the process and not be out of the process. It allows for trust. It allows for a lot of mistakes to happen. It allows for decision making devolved down the entire structure. But all this is not done in vacuum. It is done along with a process. This process is very important because without the process, it can be mayhem. You're basically giving a lot of freedom to the people, but without having a process around it. And along with the process, there are a set of policies which need to be guided. Now, the question of policies and this whole question on who needs permission and what permissions needs to be taken, of course, I contest a few things here, but the point is that the overarching idea was that people do not need any permissions. Well, if you have the process which is fairly well defined, and there is, like I said, a lot of fervent hand gesturing there. So yeah, so what I'm saying is that if the policies are all properly defined and if the policies have been participative, it includes for each and every person's participation, then typically permissions are not required. That's the kind of thought which was there in the group. The other interesting point was also celebration of effort rather than just the success, which is an interesting point. It again is a debatable point as to where do you draw the line. Should success never be a question or should it never be celebrated? It's a question which is difficult to answer. And also what should you reward and what should you penalize and what should you recognize? Those were the questions which came, which will also define the culture per se. And finally, it was about creating a closed loop system. The closed loop system which allows you to actually have a feedback where you can allow for criticism, creative criticism to come through, and thereby you're actually creating a living organism and you're actually creating a vision and a mission which is actually active and looked upon and changed as you progress. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. I think, creating, sorry.
I hope I did some justice.
Oh, there you go. Fantastic. So permissions is very interesting, right? Just take Wikipedia, for example. Anybody can go and edit, but the community takes care of what goes on and kind of self-moderated. So I think processes and procedures are equally important when you let go. Let's go to the next question. Francis, how do teachers work together in teams? Okay,
so there has to be a team. So I have let go. It's a let go from me as a moderator to the team. So, Willie, over to Willie.
That's it? Okay, we had to give our man from Ashoka a hug because he was looking so worried and upset, So, how much time do we have? We're putting it on the clock. 1 minute? 2 minutes? Really? Okay, thank you. Madam, you'll have to come in front. All right, so our question was, how do teachers work together in teams? Internally, how can best practices be shared? And how can teachers work with other school teachers? All right? And this was such an amazing, amazing group to be with because they had so many ideas. All I had to do was shut up and write. Right? And this is the wonderful team. To say something. Thank you. Thank you. There's a wonderful team that came up with this little chart. If this chart could magically go up on the screen, it would be wonderful. If this chart could magically go up on the screen, it would be wonderful. It would be really wonderful. It is possible. It is wonderful. It is happening. Then it says it all, right? So that people can see it. So essentially we said as a teacher, the teacher is in shade. No one's seeing the teacher. Wo jhaad ke piche, she's like, nobody knows where the teacher is. People don't see teachers in each different classrooms. So we said the teacher has to break through and she has to be seen. And when she's seen, she gets noticed. And everybody likes to get noticed. It's like that third standard teacher asked a question. Okay, I finished my lesson today. Does anyone have a question? And the girl on the last bench, just raise your hand. Yeah, you. Okay. She has a question. And when we asked her what the question is, she said, did you notice my new dress? Everyone wants to be noticed, right? So let's get our teachers to be noticed. Then let them share their best practices. Let them be goal-focused and goal-oriented. There is team teaching, right? Somebody spoke about team teaching. We said let's create open space technologies. Let's have a space. Let's put people together. Let them work together. Let them talk to each other. Let's probably try and go flat in terms of our organization. Let people talk to each other. Let's build a culture of cohorts in our school. Small little groups of people working together on one particular project. Let's build a culture of error and then build a culture of better. Right? Let's, you can use your height. Let's have data meetings in the school. Data is like the third person in a conversation, right? Let's look at teaching as leadership. Somebody here, raise your hand, said micro teaching. Kaun bola? Micro teaching. So many people said micro teaching. That's when teachers are helping each other with small things. We said one of the three major areas is if you want all this to happen, you need to give it time, right? So create a structure. Let there be time. Oh, time is up. Okay. Then you got to let go and then you got to let God, right? And okay. And you got to have faith. And the last thing is take away Fevicol leadership, right? Don't get stuck to your chair. Fevicol leadership should be taken away. Then have eating meetings. I'm a very serious man, I'm telling you. Have eating meetings and get online. Start sharing and don't copyright anything. Create the right to copy.
Good. Well done. Thank you. So someone said, instead of copyright, let's also do copyleft. So great. Thank you so much for the energy. And they've managed their own time, so I didn't have to do anything. Fantastic. So can we go back to the next question and the next team, please? Team 5. How can teachers better participate in student social change projects? Thanks, Reena.
Yeah, we had a wonderful team as everyone else did. And I just want to ask a question about bubble wrap. I'm sure everyone has seen it, but have you played with it? Yes. And also cocoons. So the two keywords that we came up with in our building a vision for why social projects and how social projects was that, we want children to have a process which helps them to burst the bubbles in a fun and interesting, authentic, experiential way. So we came up with this idea of social projects being a game or something, an experience that they play with the bubble wrap, where they burst their bubbles and look at a larger perspective. And a lot of activity happens in the cocoons. And we were thinking that, they are in a cocoon, but there is no space in the classroom, and social projects in this community as well. So social projects would help students, just bring up what's going on. And one of our team members talked about meal times. When there's veg and non-veg food coming out of the tiffins, that's when problems come up. And it's very clear that, what is okay, what's not okay. So we're looking at the bias and the reality, the ground reality in our classrooms being explored and engaged with as part of the social projects. Of course, it would be, we would be led by our children because what matters to them is what they can engage with. So we were looking at the teachers' roles being that of creating bonds with the students, because when they share something that matters to them, then the empathy and all the other aspects of our soft skills are put to use. So what matters to the student, from that we can talk about what's happening in the school and the family, then go on to the community, the country, and look at a global citizenship. So the keywords, of course, were looking at dealing with real problems and ground realities. We're also looking at, in the barriers in the classroom, we're looking at how from exclusion the social projects can help in inclusion, interconnectedness. Inclusion also has an element of tolerance, and I would hate to be tolerated. So we were looking at interconnectedness, by mutual understanding and mutual trust and respect. Because we're exploring fears when we're talking about social change. we want to change something which doesn't work for us. So how do we explore fears and build trust and build a sense of mutual respect? Then there was, so this was part of the vision building, and also the mind frame, the mindsets that we come with when we explored fears through the social change projects, and teachers are a big support system, like a safety net for the children in the classroom, and hopefully the families also continue the process at home, because we are looking at children, like somebody, yes, a minute. Somebody spoke about how the bomb blasts and how children are exposed to that kind of fragility in society. So how do we move from reaction to response was one of them. Start from locus of control. I know I'm using a lot of keywords, but that helps all of us leaders to understand what I'm trying to say. So the second part was about the process. What kind of a process do we want as teachers to support in the scaffolding? What is the nature or the experience of the student going to be, where obviously this social project engagement is going to help make internal shifts and instead of outer focus. So how do we look at assessment or relook at assessment and open it up to self-assessment, peer-to-peer assessment, and families also saying, what happened to my child through this whole experience? So, of course, we have a role to play, but it's more like, there's a story, and it's not a long story, but have you heard that the child was kind of, a little bit intrigued by the movement in the cocoon and opened the cocoon, and what happened? The butterfly came out, the wings were not formed. So the child's struggle is very, very important. We will have to, hold them through that struggle and hope that they come out as beautiful butterflies. And I see social change projects as that process. And for me, it was really wonderful that I wanted to explore that question, and I was also made to kind of do that. So whoever did it, the universe conspires. Thank you so much. Thank you, team.
Thank you. It was really accidental, by the way. Nobody, it's all conspired universally. The last team on distributed leadership, the largest team, I guess. So, Renu. You'll have to walk faster, Renu, if you want 10 seconds more.
I made it in time. I'll be really brief because I know we're all done, and I'll also be brief because most of the points have been covered. I'll quickly go through the process of iteration in our group. Interestingly, it was the largest group, so we went through a round of introductions, and no surprises here for guessing, all of them were leaders. And then we looked at the question, and we tried to redefine the question in the way we thought it meant to us. And we were able to do that very effectively. All concepts around distributed leadership came on the table. It was a fantastic team who analyzed it in such an effective manner. So thank you for doing that. What I'm going to discuss now in next 45 seconds, 30 seconds? Okay, 1 minute. Are the solutions that we came up with. The solutions were broadly divided into two categories. The first category was theoretical or aspirational solutions, as I would call them. Leadership, distributed leadership was defined as an inverted triangle. The leaders create leaders. They empower other people to understand their situation and find solutions in that context. So this is, if you look at it, it's more of an aspirational thing. How many of us are doing in this room? We really are not sure. I'm hoping that at least 50% of us are already doing it. Some of the solutions were practical solutions, and they were very interesting because they are following those solutions in their own context, in their organizations or in their schools. And I'll share some of them. Without taking any names, I would say that the one very interesting solution that was shared was that the school came up with the idea of setting a goal for themselves for the next 5 years And they invited all the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, the leadership, and everyone. And instead of rolling out leadership roles, let's say, they asked them if they identified with the goals and who wanted to lead what piece. And it was really interesting because, that was the first time I heard that parents were involved at such a strategic level right from the start, and they've been doing really well. So all the stakeholders were involved right from goal setting to implementation of the solution. So everything that we talk about, ownership and responsibility and freedom and everything, that was exercised in that group. One of the schools, or I think maybe since this is mainly a Podar gathering, I can say that it is a policy of Podar that they have a team, they have a leadership team in the organization. And these people get extra remuneration to be part of the leadership team. But what is more exciting is that the objective is to create more leaders. And what they are doing is that this leadership team revolves or rotates. So every year there is a new leadership team. So what is happening is that leadership is going out there to everyone, and everybody is given that opportunity to be part of it. Yeah, 1 minute is done. And I get this from Vishnu every day, so I don't need it here. I'll just say one thing that Vishnu had said, and there's so many wonderful solutions, and I can speak for the next 2 hours, but I think, I won't. Yeah. Last thing I'll say is that Vishnu also in his presentation said about letting go. And very interestingly, the school leader said that while we are expecting motivations and encouragement from the leadership, how often do we inspire and motivate and recognize our own peers? And that is very important, and there is one organization which is doing that, and I found that very interesting. And there were more solutions about how they have involved students in defining the problems and finding the solutions and setting up quality circles, reflective practitioners, empowerment, responsibility, and space to make errors. Thank you.
Thank you, Renu. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks to each one of you, because this session was actually led by each one of you. That's leadership, right? It's distributed leadership truly in action. I just want to end by just saying this to all of you. We are, I don't know if you all realize this, we as a generation are the most fortunate in history. Our generation, right? The reason is, 100 years ago, if somebody needed to shift their mindset, it took their whole lifetime, right? You look at the literacy movement. You look at civil rights. You look at freedom as a movement, right? Every country fought for freedom for their whole lives. And somebody else enjoyed the freedom, they did not, right? So it took a lot of time to change your mindset. But look at our lives. How many times have our mindsets been shifted in our own lifetimes, right? It was multiple times. Telephone was really something which we all I still remember making the first international call by booking a trunk call. I'm sure many of us do. Many of us remember telegrams. Many of us do all of this. And now we are in the WhatsApp generation, right? Like that, if you look at how our life's mindsets have shifted, it is shifted multiple times. And the good news is it is shifting faster, right? And the beauty of it is anybody can shift it. Anybody can shift it. Each one of us here can actually lead a mindset shift if you want in the next 5 years, maybe 2 years, 1 year. We have enough evidence of that. Our children, whoever is in our classrooms, are going to shift mindsets faster and faster. And you have no idea which kid is going to shift that mindset. The potential is there in everyone. The environment is building up for that everyone to be able to shift mindsets, right? So it's for us to look at it and say, how are we changing mindsets, and how are we allowing our children to change their mindsets for the future and to make a better world, right? And interestingly, if you look at the entire history, we remember leaders who changed mindsets. We don't remember anybody else. We only remember leaders who changed mindsets, right? It's not because of their greatness. Their greatness came because they shifted mindsets forever. So that's the opportunity in front of us. And and I just want to end by this, a 700-year-old quote. Before Albert Einstein came in, it's my favorite is Rumi, and many of you would have read Rumi. He said, yesterday I was clever. I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise. I'm changing myself. Thank you very much.